Welcome everyone. As folks start to come on, we'll do some general introductions about what's happening. This is What's the Next Move. We're specifically going to be talking about building an understanding of lab basics, or the BOLD program. This is designed as an information session, one, to learn a little bit more about the individuals that will be your instructors if you're accepted into the program. To learn a little bit more about the program, also learn a lot about just the individuals. So both Ebony and Dara are joining me this evening to talk about the BOLD program, to talk about their own organizations, what they do, and then we'll move forward with what the registration process is and things of that nature. Speaking of all the things of that nature, here's our general agenda. We're going to go into introductions, which is going to be really cool. The three of us are usually on, not usually, we're all the time on one accord, on the same page with certain things. So we've heard each other's introductions, but anytime we talk about our introductions, it's always something new. It's always something different. So we're going to talk about introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about Eclos Institute, what Eclos Institute is, what their function is, how they started. We're going to talk a lot about the BOLD program, how it started, kind of like where our relationship developed from when we knew, we, meaning Dara, myself, and Ebony, knew each other from last year to this year, going back even further. I'm giving you that base information. We're going to dive into the registration process. Some of you are familiar with the registration process so far, but we're going to dive a little bit more into what that means. And then we're going to conclude. We're going to conclude with some of the benefits to the participants. Some of the benefits of participants are a number of things. We're going to dive into what that means, and then we're going to conclude with questions. I will say, if you do have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to unmute yourself and ask those questions. We have an hour to spend with one another, so please, we definitely want to have this as a dialogue. I know I definitely have a lot of things to say, usually during an hour-long presentation. If you couldn't tell already, I'm super passionate about this type of work. And I could talk about this for 4 to 6 hours at a time. But without further ado, let's get into the introductions. I love this picture because we're all smiling very, very, very amazingly. But let's start with introductions of Ebony. Ebony, can you share with us who you are, what you do, how did you get in contact with Dara, what's your connection to Eclos Institute, what's your connection to BOLD?
Okay, hi everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. My name is Ebony. I am a 9th grade environmental science teacher at Abraham Lincoln High School, and I am also an instructor at Eclos Institute. A little bit about myself is that I received my undergrad degree at South Carolina State University. Then I went on to get my master's in secondary education at Cleveland State University. And then I came back home to teach science on the high school level. On my 2nd year of teaching, I met Dara at a teacher training program. And then we've been conjoined at the hip ever since. So literally anything that she does, where it's instructing, teaching, doing anything, I literally am my tag team partner with helping and assisting with the needs of the citizen scientists that we are training up. So in Eclos Institute, I work with the BOLD program, which is one of my favorite programs to work with because there are adult learners. So it is definitely different from working with high school students and then working with adults. So I always look forward to kind of engaging and interacting with the adult learners, showing them these different protocols and things that we do within the program to prepare them for any type of industry job. And I guess that's pretty much it about me.
Thanks, Ebony. I appreciate that. I always like hearing you talk about your introduction and how you're joined at the hip with Dara. Speaking of Dara, I'd love to get into Dara's introduction, which is also really amazing. Dara, if you please.
No, so if I'm joined at the hip with Ebony, I got a lot more work to do to even keep up with her. When I met Ebony a few years ago, she blasted into an adult teacher training program that I was running. And I was like, I need to work with her. I need to take her away from everything. I need to work with her. And I was always I was thrilled when she agreed to sign on with us for various programs. And now she is my partner in crime, and lets me ride in the sidecar as we teach bulb together. My name is Dara Ruiz-Whalen, Philly born and bred, Temple University. I'm actually currently a PhD student at Temple because I can't seem to get away from being a Temple owl, but I'm okay with that. I love it. I have been teaching for over 30 years and have done laboratory research for over 15. So it's deceptive. I look like I should be 86. And so bringing all these things together, it was really important for me to see science education, not only for students, but for teachers, which I wish I had heard more of the talk leading up to this, because my goal was always to support adult learners, to help support communities, whether the communities were in the classrooms or the communities were in the neighborhoods. And being in the science and education kind of circles, I met Phil Brooks. He gave a talk at Temple and I knocked people down to get to him. I was like, I told
sure did.
I'm going to go talk to the guy with the dreadlocks. I want to see the glasses. That's him. I need to talk to that guy. And I was just knocking people down in an auditorium with steep stairs. And he snuck out the side door. It wasn't because he saw me coming, I think, but he had another meeting. And I was like, oh no. So I happened to run into somebody who worked with him. And I'm like, where's the glasses, the guy? I need to talk to this guy. And like, oh, Phil. I'm like, yeah, here's my card. Please put me in touch with Phil. So Phil and I ran the same science and education circles for a really long time in Philadelphia. And a few years ago, pre-pandemic, Phil and I finally had the opportunity to work together. And he was putting this thing together with UC Science Center. We're going to talk more about that. And you can't imagine the honor it is to know that you're the first person on Phil's speed dial. And it was like the dream come true. This years and years in the making of being in this same space, trying to collaborate any chance we had. And he's like, hey, guess what we're doing? And I'm like, hey, I'm so in, that's awesome. And then we were so hyped for it. And then stupid COVID hit. And I thought, oh no, this is going to be the end of all of this. And I called Phil and I said, Phil, at this point, eCLOSE had just started in 2019. And I said, Phil, do you trust me? And he's like, most people, I'm not even going to joke and say yes. He's like, Dara, I trust you. And I'm like, I can move this entire thing online. I can bring science into the learners' homes and do this safely from home. I'm like, we're going to blow the roof off of this. And he trusted us and we took off like crazy and created this amazing program. Phil was great. He has so many connections and he's so collaborative. He worked with so many amazing institutions in and around UC Science Center. And he said, here's the list. Can you teach them to do this stuff at home? And I'm like, I can do a large portion of that on the list, and we're going to talk more about that. And so that's kind of what we do. eCLOSE is a nonprofit in Philadelphia. We run programs for students as young as 6th grade, all the way up through adult learners, including retirees. And we do run teacher training programs. So if you guys know teachers, we're always looking for folks in the Philadelphia area, because then we move citizen science, as Ebony said, citizen science programs that are focused on cancer research, diabetes, and other health concerns into the classrooms. And it's not just the students, and Ebony absolutely can talk about this, it's not just the students doing an activity, it's the students actually participating in authentic research that goes back into research labs. So if you have questions about any of the programs that we do, please do reach out to Ebony or to me. We're happy to entertain that. So I think I rolled it right into your second one with what eCLOSE is, and it is a juggernaut. It is on the train track, and we look forward to taking everybody along with us. We're handing out tickets. We want everyone to join us and really help us crush cancer and diabetes in Philadelphia.
Great. This is, again, I bring us back to this picture because we took this picture and I think we had three of us had a conversation. And we said, this is a picture we want to reuse over and over again. We got compliments about our smiles. We got feedback about our smiles, which was that made me really happy. Thank you, Dara. Thank you, Ebony, for your introduction. Very quick introduction for me, 30 seconds. Philadelphia, born in West Philadelphia on 52nd. Hazel near Malcolm X Park. Had a really amazing opportunity to go to Girard College, went to school in Massachusetts, got a biology degree, came back here, was planning to be an optometrist, but finances got in the way. Then I joined the AmeriCorps program, City of Philadelphia. I completely intended to stay there maybe for a year and leave, but I ended up being there for 10 years, primarily because I got sucked into the role of wanting to help the students of Philadelphia, so the young people of Philadelphia. So I learned so much during my time with City here. That time ended and my time with city government started with connecting individuals across the city with STEM mentorship and STEM connectivity. And then my time with city government ended in the Commerce Department, which got me a lot of connections to the business world, a lot of connections to the life science world, and connecting them with young people. And then the Science Center said, hey, Phil, do you want to do this thing with connecting adults to the science community and getting jobs? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So that's me in 30 seconds. I know my story is way longer than that, but I definitely want to get into more information about eCLOSE Institute and where we're going from here, especially because a lot of what eCLOSE does, and Dara can talk about this in a few moments, is so closely aligned to what we do in their training with teachers that it was a no-brainer. I would not have been a smart human being if I did not reach out to Dara. So Dara, if you please, talking a little bit more about eCLOSE Institute.
I thought you were kidding that you're going to put up the award symbol, the badges. No, but you missed the one from Milk and Pen from.
I was gonna. There was 4 of them, right? And I was gonna do it in the.
Hopefully, someone from across the street doesn't see this and doesn't see their badge up there.
Just turn the camera around.
So. Yeah, just wave at the Catalyst building across the street. So as I said, eCLOSE started in 2019. It grew out of a collaboration that I have with Alana O'Reilly, who's a faculty member at Fox Chase Cancer Center. We had worked together for a lot of years designing programs that originally were just for, you know, a short course to teach high school students how to do cancer research, ones that were interested in going into biology majors or pre-medicine. And it wasn't long after the very first session that I looked at her, I said, you know, I have this crazy idea. I said, if we could train teachers how to do this, we would reach so many more students in the area than just this 16. And she looked at me and she's like, okay. So whatever the reason is, people trust me to do things. I'm like, hey, I have this crazy idea. So you know, I took it upon myself to be like, I really want to work with teachers because I'm no longer in formal education. I'm not in the classrooms any longer. But if I can help support teachers, and I used to say just to give them a good day in science to support their students, we're going to see a lot of students now entering fields that, especially in Philadelphia, and I know what it's like to be told, you're not the right type of person for this type of field. And I'm like, well, I don't really know what that means. You know, it was a long journey for me, but working with these teachers became so amazing and so integral. And in 2019, which was the same year that we started eCLOSE, we were in over 19 classrooms in the tri-state area. And over 1,000 high school students were collecting cancer research data. Several hundred of those were Ebony Dyson's students. And we got to present data. They got to present data. I just got to go along for the ride. They got to present their data at the Franklin Institute. And Phil was there. And we just kept looking at each other going, I can't believe this is happening. And Fox Chase was they were so proud of us. And they said, okay, ladies, you've gotten too big. It's very successful. We're very proud. We're giving you a release to go and try this on your own. So we looked at each other. I'm like, well, we're going to try it on our own or it's just going to go away. And so we signed up for the Milk and Pen Education Entrepreneurship Competition. We came in second and won the Audience Choice Awards. So thank you to my friend Ebony and Phil who was in there. They were in the audience and they voted for us. And of course, when I was on stage, I was like shouting out to all the teachers. I'm like, to all the teachers, and yeah, poor Penn didn't know what to do with me on a stage. And from there, it kind of got crazy. We entered competitions because we needed to get our name out. We won the bronze in London. We were named the Education Innovators of the Year last year, and we got to judge this year. And so it's been really kind of an amazing journey for two women in Philadelphia that kind of were just like, yeah, go ahead, let's see what you can do. And we're decided, you know, we're going to show everybody what we can do. And then we decided it couldn't just be, you know, this. We decided to go this way in the chronological scale, and this way. We were like, okay, we're going to start get these young kids interested in research young. Change the pipeline, change the workforce. And what we realized is we were doing workforce development even at this young age, because if you were a few hours ago, you would have seen we hire the people that we train. We hire the high school students to be technicians. We hire our amazing teachers to be teachers and instructors for eCLOSE. We hire them to do office managerial work. And then through Bulb and Phil, we actually have 2 program manager interns that were members of the Bulb program. And they're doing just amazing work. And we're just trying to find ways to keep them in the pipeline and keep supporting them because they're supporting a system that's just bigger than themselves. And that's what we keep trying to do. So we build these programs out. All of them are designed around diet and research. They're all focused on technique and applicability, not just let's learn this to learn this, but how does this apply to if I go to work in a research lab? What are some of the vocabulary terms? Should I be comfortable looking at these instruments? How can I be part of this bigger picture? And how can I take on new jobs? How can I make a difference for my family, for my neighborhood and my community? And, you know, eCLOSE, like I said, this is it. This is our whole lab. It's not very large, but we work very well together in these tight quarters because we're collaborative and we all respect each other for the work that we do. And one of our capstone program was working with Phil and Bulb, and I'm looking forward to working with more Bulb participants in the coming years.
Awesome, thank you, thank you. This is also like, it's been an honor for me, mostly because Dara, I knew Dara for a while, and Dara introduced me to Ebony. And when she introduced me to Ebony, I was like, okay, great. I know Ebony is connected with Dara because very similar personalities, very similar amount of passion and enthusiasm. So actually, Ebony, I'd like for you to talk a little bit more about, you know, why it's important for you to continue to do the work that you're doing. You're a high school teacher, which I know is a gigantic task in and of itself. And something like this is outside of your teaching, kind of like your time. You work, you know, a lot. You know, you teach high school kids, right? But like, why is it important for you to be a part of this? You know, not even just the Bulb program, but eCLOSE Institute. What's the importance for you?
So the importance for me, and as I tell my students, and what they even see when they walk into my classroom, is that representation matters. So I want them to be able to see a Black woman in the classroom and in the lab space too. So that's my push for all of this. So being able to pour into students in the classroom and then being able to be in the lab space and pouring into adults and undergraduate students in that space too is really, really important to me, because I feel like they need to see that. They need to see a Black woman that's able to balance and do multiple things and it's still helping people and still giving back. So I think like that's my push. That's the reason why I do it. And that's why I'm so passionate about doing it, because it really matters.
Awesome. That's an excellent statement. That's such a great statement. Moving into how we started. So Dara definitely talked a lot about our introduction, how we know each other, how we connected with Ebony, the start of eCLOSE Institute. I started the Science Center. What we tried to do is utilize exactly what Dara was talking about. We tried to utilize data as much as possible. We didn't want to move into a program or an initiative or a workforce development program that just trained people for the sake of training. So we partnered very closely with West Philadelphia Skills Initiative. We also partnered closely with the Chamber of Commerce, and we connected with eConsult Solutions. eConsult Solutions helped us put together something called the Cell and Gene Therapy and Connected Health Needs Assessment Study. This started in 2019 by gathering a whole host of different people from companies, organizations, higher education institutions, city government, all of the above. And what we really tried to do was scrape burning glass data, LinkedIn data, and tried to do a very, very broad 30,000 foot view of the city of Philadelphia in relation to talent development and what talent needs different companies were gonna, require over the next 3 to 5 years. So a picture of the actual document is at the bottom of the screen. The link is there too. I think we can put the link in the chat, or we can share it a little bit later on. But one of the biggest things that came out of this very specific document was the results that you see in front of you right now. And this is really just a projection over the next 10 years in terms of the numbers of individuals with different degrees or different education levels would look like within this space, within the cell and gene therapy and connected health space. At the bottom, you see dark gray and gray, and that's really master's level up to BA, PhD, doctorate, which is fine. There's, fluctuations in the number of folks that are gonna be in those fields, in that position. In the red, you see business operations. Business operations include marketing, accounting, finance, everything that helps the business run. And as companies continue to grow, there's going to be a need for individuals to be placed in this space. And at the very, very top in light gray, you see manufacturing. What we've tried to do is we try to utilize this graph as well as some of the other graphs that the report kind of made the results from, and say, there's going to be a need in these areas, and we want to prepare people, as much as possible. There's organizations working with high school students. There's organizations working with incumbent workers. We really want to be able to utilize the strengths that eCLOSE Institute has done in relation to talking and training teachers, utilize that same adult learner aspect, and have some of the companies let us know, hey, this is what I'm expecting in the next 3 to 5 years. Here's what I might be expecting in the next 6 months. What do you got for me? So what we want to try and do is support them with the learning of different protocols at the very basic level, but really utilize that individuals, that participants' work experience. So an example is, I am a person that's been in the customer service industry for 15 years. I want to reskill. I want to do something different. I heard about life science. It may have been very fearful for me because I never had a science bone in my body, but is there a program for me to get connected into this space? And that's, essentially where we come in. And as we grow and evolve, we want to be able to make sure that individual that I just described is able to go to an interview, talk about their work experience, but also talk about this really amazing experience that they had with these instructors from eCLOSE Institute, and this other guy with the dreadlocks called Phil, that they're able to walk into that interview and really blow it out of the water, right? So there's definitely a lot of information, a lot of data in relation to what we've done here. But one of the things that I definitely want to try and focus on, and I'll ask Dara and Ebony to talk a little bit more about this, but on the far right-hand side towards the bottom, and I'm sorry, Dara, I'm apologizing right now, Dara, because it still says RNA. Just DNA isolation. So some of the protocols that we review in the BOLD program include gel electrophoresis, DNA isolation. ELISA assay is not on here, but we did a little bit of that in basic lab safety and microscopy. Dara or Ebony, can you guys either split that up and talk a little bit more about what some of those protocols look like? And I apologize, Dara, I'm sorry to left RNA on there. You can only do that in the lab space. You can't do that in the person's home. I apologize. Don't come through the computer and wring my neck.
You want to go back and forth? What do you want to do? Which parts would you like, Ebony?
Okay, I'll start with basic lab safety. So when we start with basic lab safety, it is literally what we mean, basic lab safety. So making sure we have goggles, gloves, not eating at our workspace. And because we are all at home, we really make sure everybody kind of find themselves a little spot. This is your lab now. Find your spot. We send tablecloths and all of that good stuff. So you are now in your own lab. I don't care if you're in your bedroom, your kitchen, your living room, you are now in your lab space. And in your lab space, there are certain things you can and cannot have around. So no drinking, no eating, so all of those components we really, really push. So participants are really in the flow and in the habit of really being in an actual lab. Having your hair tied back. So it's just a second nature to always have a scrunchie on my wrist because I'm currently in the lab. So it's like, oh, I'm in the lab. I know what I need. I need to, always follow these steps. So we really make that a priority to emphasize the lab safety, that regardless if you're in the lab space, an actual lab space, or your at-home lab space, you are following these protocols. So when you do get immersed in a real facility, that you know what to expect, and you're not, bamboozled by like not having anything to drink in the lab or at your workstation, specifically, and doing simple things like pulling your hair back and things like that. Tag, you're it, Dara.
That's the rest of the list. So actually, I'm going to have you be my partner on this one in terms of microscopy. A lot of the bulb participants are going to end up going into laboratories. And one of the things we want to teach them is basic microscopy. We go through a series, we actually have them create wet slides, because a lot of people have never put together a slide to look at. And Ebony has been so kind, because we were both hustling around trying to find the right tools to be able to share with everyone. And this is an inverted microscope. And this is what the bulb participants for the summer 2021 program are going to be receiving as part of their lab kit. So not only are we teaching them lab safety and doing this at home, they receive, I think Phil, didn't one of the students refer to it as like a Christmas box of science stuff, or
Yes.
it's like it's like they just open it and they're like, it's science stuff. So this is an inverted microscope, and everything that is in the kit was done very deliberately. It was designed with the idea in mind that if the participants go in to a laboratory setting, and at the technical level they have to do tissue culture work, we often use inverted microscopes in tissue culture. And in fact, one of the largest confocal laser microscope companies makes them as an inverted system as well. So we want them to understand that microscopes aren't just that thing that we see constantly in cartoons with the objectives pointing down, that they do come in different shapes and sizes. And this particular one is super awesome because they can actually take pictures with it. So the eyepiece comes out, a camera gets inserted, and they do get the camera for it. And it's really cool to see them be able to use the microscope and know that oftentimes their families are there and they want to try it. And so Ebony and I do our best to give them a whole range of preparing samples and looking at them and analyzing them. Along with the lab safety, we also do storage. And it sounds like something really crazy, but when you work in a lab, you have to know if it says 4 degrees, where does it have to go? If it says 20 degrees, where does it have to go? If it's minus 80, where does it have to go? And we try to go through those steps and send them a lot of material that they're responsible for putting at different temperatures, whether in their refrigerator or their freezer, or sometimes just at room temperature. So it's important for them to always read the protocols, always look at the labels, be aware that there's different things that have to go at different temperatures. So we do that. We do DNA isolation. And if I could, I would be doing RNA isolation, but we cannot tape everybody up and make sure they're gowned up and completely ethanol their entire area to do that. But we do actually send out the components of a spin kit, and they learn about DNA isolation. We do, because eCLOSE is a Drosophila model organism based program. We do send out fruit flies. We've always promised they are never of this plane still. So they are frozen and crunchy, and they grind them up, and then we actually send them out mini centrifuges, and they do an entire DNA isolation protocol. And it's actually quite amazing. And the electrophoresis kits they're getting this year actually come with their own light box attached to it. It has a little center where you can put your phone on it and take a picture if you wish. And they'll be able to actually see the progression of DNA bands, and actually get the feel for doing that. We actually run vital dyes as well. And that way they get the concept of charge and the movement, molecular size, and they do this against a ladder. In order to do all of that, they do get their own micropipettes. And this is like one of the most amazing things. If I had been like 100 years ago and somebody was like, you can type this program and get a set of your own micropipettes, I would have been like, okay, I'm signing up for this program, because this is just like awesome. They get tips, they get pipettes. This is also another fan favorite. They get a little baby vortex. So if nothing else, if you're ever interested in starting up a lab and want somebody to help source things for you, please call me. I'm ridiculously good at it. And so that's some of the things they do. ELISA is not on there. We do a very basic introduction to ELISA. We show them what a 96 well plate is. We do a brief colorimetric exercise. We talk about what they would be doing it. We talk about binding. We talk about antibodies. So we give them we don't overload them with lecture, but we do give them access to programs like Lab Exchange out of Harvard. We show them simulations, so that way they feel comfortable. They're confident in the vocabulary and they can add this to their resume and talk about it at interviews. But we give them this introduction. And when we have guest speakers, we often invite the guest speakers to ask the participants what they're working on those days. And it's awesome to hear them say, well, today I got to do, and learning the timing of things, doing the ELISA, you have to watching your timer. You can't just take your time with these things or else they kind of get funny. So we cram a lot into those weeks. We do dilutions. They make their own solutions. They learn how to pour plates. So if you ever have to do an LB plate or any type of agar plate, they've learned how to do that. They make solutions. They buffer. They make their own pH. They pH, make their own buffer at home. But we utilize things that are safe to do at home. They can use their microwave, but nothing ever, is tragic, and everything can be cleaned with soap and water. So we stuff a lot into 2 weeks, and there's never a dull moment, and it's filled with a lot of laughter and a lot of photos. And some of Ebony's my favorite photos are when the participants take pictures of their home lab. How do they represent themselves as scientists, and how do they want other people to see them as scientists? Because I'm not wearing a lab coat, I'm not wearing gloves all the time. I come to the lab in my sneakers, many cases, and no makeup. And for young women that are working in the labs, they're like, aren't you all done up? No, I just barely put a little bit of skim coat on for Phil today. And all of a sudden now you see these young women scientists that are comfortable just to be who they are in their skin in a laboratory environment. And so Ebony and I keep it very real. We have a lot of fun, and trust us, we want to drink coffee during the early hours of the program too. And that's usually when one of us is like, got to sign off for 3 minutes. And we tag it back in, but we make it very clear that we do not drink and eat in front, and we treat everything from a TV. I think we had a TV tray all the way up to a dining room table, I think, in bulb, and we make it work. You can see that we go out of our way to make the equipment miniature. And we always, we send a power surge thing. So we make sure that they have the electronics that they need, and the support materials, not just like these fancy pieces of equipment, but things that they can run on batteries or other things that are manual. And we have a lot of fun while we're doing these techniques. So that's kind of, we cover a lot, but we're hoping to, as we grow, just continue covering more.
That's awesome. Thank you for that summary. And I think just having parts of the program be laughter is something that is necessary, because we're all in a very stressful situation. I know most of the times in both of the cohorts from last year, the summer and the fall cohort, we discovered that a lot of the participants were teaching their siblings, or teaching their children, or teaching their parents. And I think that was one of the underforeseen kind of benefits to this program. I'll talk about her a little bit later on, but one of our participants in our first program had an opportunity to do a paid internship at Integral Molecular. We'll move on though. As a matter of fact, just start talking about it. A lot of what we have done in relation to data, the data that we've gathered, the data that Eclos have gathered, the experience that Dara has, the experience that Ebony has with working with different groups, has all really come to us taking action steps. I was on a call earlier today with a few folks from CCP, and we agreed that a lot of conversations are happening, but not enough action. So everything that Dara just described, what people go through with protocols, everything that Ebony just described in terms of basic lab safety, this may all be kind of like elementary, and you may be saying, oh, I already know that. You'd be surprised at how many people don't know they can't drink coffee in the lab setting, or don't know that they shouldn't have their hair down, right? It's sometimes really difficult to know that people don't know that, but we try to make sure people know that going through these types of protocols, going through these different programs. So that's all really, really, really amazing. I think the data also speaks for itself in terms of what's coming down the line. both in the manufacturing side, the lab space side, the business operations side, and all of this, everything that what we're doing with the BULB program is in turn helping prepare adult learners to move into this space in different unique ways. So here's just a quick rundown of the actual BULB program. You heard a lot about this already. 2-week program, all the materials and equipment will be supplied to the participants. We're gonna be doing 9 a.m. to noon, which is roughly about 3 hours. That's gonna happen between July 19th to July 30th. It's gonna be hot, it's gonna be really early. So if you are chosen as a participant, get that coffee in earlier than 9 o'clock, and then we can move on from there. What I didn't hit on here was 2 things. One, the selection committee. I'll get to selection committee in a second. But the guest speakers that both Ebony and Dara talked about, the guest speakers are chosen by all of us. We try to be very selective in the folks who come on and guest speak for us. We've had HR representatives, we've had talent acquisition leads, we've had folks very high in industry, vice presidents of regulatory affairs, we've had CEOs come and speak to the folks, really because it's an opportunity for them, one, to connect to this world, to connect to this industry, and they can say during an interview, oh, I had a chance to hear from this CEO from this company, and they suggested I talk about this. Or I heard directly from the hiring manager from this company, and she said that in an interview for a life science company, I should do this. One really, really big thing that I think folks, hopefully we impart and people walk away from this program is that you don't necessarily have to be a scientist or a tech whiz to work at a life science company or a tech company. There are other roles within this space that we want to prepare folks for, but we also want to encourage folks to take on some of those science roles, take on some of those tech roles, and move forward in a way that's going to be not only impactful for your community, but impactful for your family, all of the above. So that's a little bit of information in relation to that. I'll get into the registration process. Right now, we have this flyer up. If folks click on that red Apply Now button, it's going to take you to this application. The application itself is not that long, but one thing I'll emphasize with the application is the statement of intent is a question that it's not captured on here, it's a little bit further down. But the statement of intent is really the participants or the applicants' opportunity to talk about why they're interested in the program, right? I unfortunately have read through applications where it says, I love science. That's not telling me anything. That's not telling me that you have a passion for STEM. That's not telling me that you want to reskill. That's not telling me that all the opportunities that are essentially ahead of you or before you right now that you want to take advantage of. What I will say is that the selections committee, the people who review all of the applications, are individuals from the STEM community. Some Science Center employees go over the applications, but in essence, these are the employers that are reviewing these applications. The employers that are coming from all these different companies in the area, in the U-City area, all across the Philadelphia landscape are reviewing these applications. And I think the importance of this is they give us feedback on if a person should apply for this program or not, or if they're good for this program or not. And I also always try to include in our survey with the selection committee to say, you know, if the application that you just read here, say somebody filled out this application that's on the screen, I'll ask a company lead, and that's a selection committee member, and say, listen, if this person had 1 to 2 more skills, would you hire this person with their company? And you'd be surprised some of the feedback that I've gotten from individuals. Feedback that says, if this person knew these 2 things, I would hire them on the spot. If this person knew about these 3 things, I would bring them on as an intern or a paid intern. And this feedback is really important for us because it gives us an opportunity to build that relationship more with companies, but not only build those relationships with companies, but connect the participants to some of the opportunities that are coming down the line. So really important, if you haven't filled in the application, when you do fill in the application, pay attention to that statement of purpose or that statement of interest. Really, really important to actually put information in there that says, hey, listen, this is why I'm important. Because it's not just the Science Center folks reading this, it's the individuals that we want you to be hired by reading this, right? So that's really just general information about that part. So benefits to the participants, right? I'll start with the bottom right-hand corner. Dara mentioned this, this amazing online resource, Lab Exchange. Actually, Dara, can you talk a little bit more about Lab Exchange? What some of the benefits are to the participants related to that? All of that. Can you talk a little bit more about Lab Exchange?
So when we started really formulating the idea of launching eCLOSE in the virtual space, social media is an amazing thing. You find out about all sorts of programs that if you didn't know about them already and you click on them, you get to find all this information. And there was this webinar and said, hey, if you're a science educator person or in the science education space, you want to come to this webinar. And I went, and Lab Exchange was the one hosting it. And I fell in love with this thing. I'm like, oh my goodness, where was this when my sons were younger? And my daughter is absolutely going to be using this as she gets a little bit older. Lab Exchange is a program that comes out of Harvard. And after the seminar, I contacted them and I said, hey, this is who we are. We're eCLOSE. This is what we do. Can we use your program? And after a few conversations, they were completely on board. eCLOSE became a collaborative nonprofit partner. And we used Lab Exchange in a way, and actually the amount of work that they put into it in the past year has been amazing. Lab Exchange allows all of our participants to log into our eCLOSE classroom, or our eCLOSE lab is what we call them online. And what we do is we have now already mined Lab Exchange for simulations, interactives, and reading and image material that aligns with the course structure that Ebony and I have put together and are presenting to the students. Because as teachers, we've done this a long time. We know not everybody wants to learn just by reading page after page after page of protocol. And even protocols can be a little bit challenging. You can put a recipe book in front of everybody, but they're not all going to be able to make the cake. So what we do with Lab Exchange is we let students get comfortable with the structures of materials and talking about it. And there's no messing up. And if you don't click the right button in Lab Exchange, it says, hey, maybe try this button. And it gives them that moment of confidence where then they pick up their thing and they're like, okay, that video said I have to stop here. And you see them and they can have it playing simultaneously. We sometimes play certain videos for them, but we definitely build in time to set them loose and let them play with it. For early science learners, it has an amazing wealth of papers that were written by young researchers to teach analysis of literature, which is really important when you go into these meetings. And people are like, oh, well, this is what my lab works on. Here's a paper. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I think I did that to Ebony once. And she was like, what? And it was done to me. But then we look at these papers, but if we go back now and read those papers, we're like, yeah, we got that. But if you have something that's helping you learn the language, because science is a beautiful brand new foreign language, and most of it's not even in English, and it helps to teach you and it guides you, and we've really used it to great success to help support the curriculum that we've developed, and to really support our students. And the best part is they have it for life. The subscription for them is free, and they get to use it, and they have access not only to Lab Exchange but through the registration to edX, which has, and Ebony and I were like, we got to take this class, like for $10 you can take this class online. You're like, oh, I just learned how to make soap or things like that, and they're really cool. But those are not obviously necessary. I was going to say you get to learn how to make wine, but that was a different class that I was trying to get her to take with me. And it's just this really amazing resource, and the folks, and this is what makes it the best thing. I don't work with people that I don't really like. I love Phil, and that's why I work with Phil. I love Ebony, and that's why I work with Ebony. The people at Lab Exchange, and Ebony's been in on the meetings with us, they're so real. They are just like, they have come to presentations from participants and said, tell us how to make this better. Tell us what we can do to make this a better experience for your family and for your children. And that's huge. That is a really impactful part. So they're highly collaborative, and it is just a cool website.
When I logged into it, the videos. Yep, when I logged into it, the videos were amazing. So I have a 12-year-old right now. I'm forcing her into science. She doesn't have a choice. But I had an opportunity to use this, and she looked through the protocols and she looked through one of the videos about gel electrophoresis. She's going to 7th grade, but she's gonna know about this stuff. Anyway, I had her look through it, and like, this is a kid who like hears me talk all the time. I'm her dad, whatever. But you know, she actually came to me and was like, "Dad, I understand that." I was like, "Okay, explain it back to me." And she was able to understand and explain it back to me in a way that I was like, "Okay, great. If you were my teacher, I would get this." So lab exchange, really, really amazing benefit to the folks who are to participate in the BOLD program. Free. I know if I remember correctly, at some point this was, you had to pay for this for college students or something like that, but this is completely free for the participants that are going through the program. Some of the other
we definitely got lucky, and the participants that are coming through BOLD, because eCLOSE got in there before this thing blew up. We got in there when it was only like 20 different sites that were using it. And so we got very fortunate. So yes, so the BOLD participants still free.
Awesome. The materials and equipment that we talked about is another benefit to the program, which is really cool. Each participant upon graduation will receive a laptop computer. So this is a Microsoft Surface Pro. I don't know if y'all can see this, but this is really nice. The Science Center gave me one of these. These are beautiful. Each participant gets a brand new computer, right? So we're doing this for a number of reasons. One, because the digital divide is a real thing, right? Extra devices in the home right now is so essential. In the middle of the pandemic, you know, you have students going to school online, you have adults working from home. You know, it's really important that more devices are in the home for a number of reasons, right? And there's other programs, and I can definitely shout out some Office of Innovation and Technology programs through city government that's helping give more access and more computers to Philadelphians. This is a small sliver to the piece of the pie that is a digital divide, but we thought that this is extremely important to make sure that, you know, hey, you went through these 2 weeks with these 3 high energy individuals, myself, Dara, and Ebony. Here's your reward for going through all of these programs, a brand new device. Here you go, enjoy. And it comes with all the bells and whistles, security, blah, 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 blah. What I think, however, is the biggest benefit to this program is the employer mentor connection that we make with you. So the picture that you've been seeing in all of the slides is of an individual named Jonelle Williams. Jonelle Williams was a participant in the BOLD program in the summer of 2020. Her mentor was an individual from Integral Molecular. After the program was over, that mentor reached out to me and said, "Hey, listen, Phil, what's Jonelle doing?" I was like, "I don't know, ask her. She works at People Emergency Center." And he said to me, "Hey, you know, we're doing this internship at Integral Molecular. We want it to be paid. Can Jonelle, you know, apply?" I was like, "Yeah, but you should just ask her directly." So we made the connection. During the month of October, Jonelle had an opportunity to go into the Integral Molecular Lab, get paid for learning about viruses and vectors. In the lab space, we're able to provide her with at-home kits and things of that nature, but she was able to connect with this mentor at Integral Molecular, work with them closely, work with their team closely, and it was as if she was being onboarded as an actual employee for Integral Molecular over the month of October. So those are one of the benefits to the program. It's not going to happen for every participant. We wanted to have it for every participant eventually, but that's just an example, and why I think this is probably one of the biggest benefits to the program participants for this program. Moving on, because I think I want to save some time, last 10 minutes for questions. Next steps, look at that. Next steps, right? So definitely apply. We're going to be extending the deadline to next Wednesday, June 30th to 5 p.m. So if folks still want to apply, go ahead and do so. You can definitely go to the Science Center website, click on Workforce Development. The Apply Now button is there, the link is there, the extended deadline is there. And then right now, what I want to do is open it up for questions and save maybe the last 2 minutes for some final words from both Dara and Ebony. So let's please unmute yourself, ask questions, any clarifying questions, all of that stuff. Time is now.
And if anybody has any questions in the room here, feel free to ask too. You're on microphones. There are microphones hanging from the ceiling, so folks on Zoom will be able to hear you.
we covered everything pretty well.
Such a good
The last
job,
time,
yeah.
the last time we did this, we only had a half an hour. Now that we had an hour, we covered everything very
Yeah,
thoroughly.
yeah.
Oh, okay, great, awesome. All right, well, I have a question then. Moving forward, moving on, kind of like with the program itself, either for Ebony or Dara, where do you and your focus and what you're doing, where do you see the bold programming evolving into? Like, where do you see the next steps with this type of program? We've done this summer of 2020, we've done this again, the fall of 2020. We're about to do it again, summer 2021, in the next few weeks. Where do you see this going? What's the next step for the program?
So like I said, there were always unexpected things that came out of our collaboration with Bulb. One of the things that eCLOSE has definitely been thrilled about is that we were just able to offer a third research scholarship to a Bulb participant today. So that's so exciting for us, because not only do we know that they're still using their lab kits that they got from Bulb, but now they're going to be able to apply this to a research project and help to bolster applications going forward. And eCLOSE also brought on, again, two interns from the winter session, so that was awesome. But one of the things, and Phil and I have batted this about, is that we cannot wait until this is all behind us and we get to be in a live space. Because when I'm talking to companies and I'm sourcing materials for this program, I'm explaining, I'm like, we're doing this at home. They're like, that's pretty awesome. And I'm like, so when we move to a live space, how can you hook me up? And so Phil, I'm going to make dreams happen. I'm going to be like your own fairy godmother.
I appreciate it.
I mean, we're doing great now, but it's going to be even crazier. I'm always sending Ebony links. Eb, what do you think? Should we get that? And usually the first answer is, that's so cute. And I'm like, but you have to understand, I mean, we're still going to be, you know, it's okay to be a woman and a scientist. And that don't mean that we can't have cute stuff. So we definitely should, there is a cute factor that is in play. But we want to make sure that the student, the participants, the adult learners, everybody can actually, you know, they understand it. It's not just, it's a cute centrifuge. We explain to them what centrifugation is. Why is it at a canted angle? What's happening as the things are rotating around? How do we, you know, separate samples? So we do go into the technical stuff, but it's okay for it to be cute. So make us live, Phil. Get us a lab. We want to
got
lab.
right upstairs. You know, we've got
Right?
confirmations from folks.
Ebony and I are cutting our teeth over at eCLOSE designing a lab space. So we're looking forward to a Bulb lab.
Oh, hello.
I can't wait. What about you, Ebony?
Hello.
And I think there's a question
Yes.
about that.
I put a question in the chat. Could you please respond?
Hi, so Mrs. Thomas, but I teach in a school, so I can do these research skills with my students. Yes, Ebony, can you talk? I mean, I can say that we do it, but it's better to come from a teacher.
Yeah, so we do these projects in our classrooms, and you can definitely do it in an after school club. So I did it hybrid the last couple of weeks of school with the 2 students I had in person, and then I had about 14 at home. Out of the 14, only 6 had a kit at home to actually do the experiments. So what we did, we looked at the fertility of Drosophila based on different junk foods my students fed them. So I do teach environmental science. So had we been all in the classroom in the beginning of the year, we will grow different crops, different plants, or we will get some plants from different facilities around the city, and we would basically feed our fruit flies that have different mutations. We will feed them these different herbs, whether it's basil or lemongrass or catnip. We'll feed them these different plants, and then we will look at the fertility and the mortality of what those plants actually did to our flies. So that's kind of what I do in the classroom when it was like a regular classroom. However, being hybrid, where, you know, some students are here, some students are at home, we were doing a junk food lab where we were just finding any foods in our houses and feeding it to our flies and monitoring them every 7 days, trying to see, you know, what's going on. Do we still have flies flying around? Are they not flying around? You know, things like that. And then the students are given these conversations of what they think is going on. So like I said, we only did it at the end of the school year for about 3 weeks. You know, just trying to adjust being back in the building and not everyone being in there. But we can definitely iron out a program and a procedure to fit your after school program, so you can really give the students what they, you know, what they're looking for and what their interests are. So if they're interested in looking at a particular food group or nutritional supplement, or if they're looking at a particular you know, disease, if they're looking at cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, if they want to look at diabetes, if they want to look at HPV, if they even want to, you know, talk about and look at things that are related to COVID, we do create different protocols and different experiments that they can utilize in order to kind of get their thoughts and stuff ironed out.
Thank you. And also for these 2 weeks course, do you send the kids to our home?
Yes,
Lab
you
kits?
all get kids at home. Yep. So y'all get a
Okay,
really,
thank
really
you.
fancy box with everything in it. So all of your materials, like I said, we send little extra stuff like tablecloths just so you can cover your lab space and little things like that. But you get everything sent to you where you are.
Another thing is that, do you send any textbook or a research guide for this once the school opens for us to for a reference? Do you have?
We don't have a textbook yet. The eCLOSE programs that we work with schools, I put our email address and our webpage so you can kind of see what we do. We look for grant funding. We just we received the Genes Grant Foundation, and we worked with Spruance Middle School in Philadelphia this past spring, and we Abington School District got a small grant from their education foundation, and we ran an 8-week program with their after school science program. So we look to do those things, but because it's digital, we keep things on that format, and we also try to decrease our carbon footprint by keeping things digital versus just printing out lots and lots of handouts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all for your questions. Thank you all for your attention. I'd like to thank my partners in crime, Dara and Ebony. Thank you so much for keeping it hype on this past hour. We definitely look forward to the participants. We look forward to this summer. This has been What's the Next Move? Building an Understanding of Lab Basics, the info session for the summer of 2021. My name is Phil Brooks. Thank you.